Hello, welcome to the show. This is Emotional Badass, where Moxie meets mindful. I'm your host, Nikki Eisenhower, life coach and psychotherapist. And on today's episode, I want to talk about our early childhood experiences. For a long time in human history, psychology assumed that the stuff that happens to a baby or a toddler before actual solid memories form is just forgotten. It's like wind that passes on by. So early childhood experiences were deemed insignificant. This was a comfortable and convenient idea that today we know is totally wrong. I've spoken publicly about some of my early impactful childhood experiences that I most certainly know as family lore, not as my own memories, like me getting Catholic last rites, the death sacrament, because they really thought I was going to die soon after my premature birth. I don't remember that. I was told about that history as family lore. We all have family lore. It's how we learn about our early childhood experiences. Please remember to find Emotional Badass wherever you get your podcasts, and make sure to hit that subscribe and follow button to get more videos like this in your feed. I haven't so much shared a big part of what happened to me between 3 and 6 years old. And I believe that this played a major role in how I developed. In giving me anxiety, I may have had post-traumatic stress disorder symptoms as young as 6 years old, well before getting molested at about 12 years old for the first time. Well before my biological father started his deadbeat dad legacy. Well before the traumas, the struggle, the stress of having the threat of him kidnapping and killing me. I've mentioned this in other episodes, and I'll never know if this was an honest threat or a fabrication my mother used against him in court, against custody. But it was a serious threat. My elementary school was involved in keeping me safe from that threat. So this was much more than angry parents spouting off in front of the kids and scaring me. This threat began when I was 6 to 7 years old until he fully stopped seeing me, went missing in action, and then fully abandoned me and my siblings by the time I was 10. He didn't pay court-ordered child support till he made a deal and signed away his parental rights to me when I was 14 so my abuser could officially adopt me. Now, all of that was way too much for me to process as a little kid. It was way too much to understand, and I was very, very affected. But before all of that, my sisters were born when I was 3 and 5. My mother's high school best friend, they were both pregnant at the same time. She had her baby a few months before I was born, and that baby died of SIDS. SIDS is sudden infant death syndrome. And because I was born a month early, because my lungs were underdeveloped and my heart would just periodically stop, when I went home, I was hooked up with monitors, electrode patches on my chest to monitor my breathing and my heartbeat. I, of course, have no conscious memory of wearing this device as a baby, but I know from family lore that I stopped breathing, my heart stopped regularly, and my mom had to resuscitate me. Now, my siblings were also born preemies. They were both very sick. Both my siblings spent at least a month, maybe a couple weeks more, in the hospital when they were born. My mom always insisted that she stop smoking cigarettes the second she knew she was pregnant, but I don't believe that for a second, particularly because all three of us had so many symptoms of being born to a heavy smoker. One of the things that I can very confidently say that my mom did really, really well, she did right by me, was she hyped me up about being the oldest sibling. It's really puzzled me all my life watching kids get siblings and being upset about it because I had such a different natural way of being about becoming a sister. I think part of that was who I am, the person I am, my temperament, my personality, even something spiritually divine, that I was born the eldest and was able to be an older sister. But I can also give some of that credit to my mother. I was excited to have that role. I was excited with my big, giant heart. She would say things to me like, wow, you're going to be an older sibling. Siblings is something I think my mom understands. She was the youngest of 6. Her siblings have held her in a lot of ways all of her life. I would also say they've enabled her in a lot of ways all of her life. But being a sibling was something my grandmother instilled in her children as having high regard about. That was a valued role in the family systems I was raised in. Now, my heart was just as big back then as it is now. It was just more innocent, more pure. I had the energy of going to Disney World about my siblings coming. Some of my most normal, happy memories with my mom are in a tiny kids' pool. My sisters were born in late summer, both of them. And my mom would be about to pop in a bathing suit, and we'd be sitting in a few inches of water trying to cool off in that hellish, humid Louisiana summer heat. And I would kiss her belly and I would talk to her belly. I would tell my sisters that I loved them, and I knew that it was my role to protect them. I would tell them before they were even here, I'm going to love you and I'm going to protect you. It's my job. It will always be one of the greatest tragedies of my life that how my sibling relationships started were with so much love, protection, connection. And how it's going and how it will likely end is that we are unable to have contact as grown adult women because of the lives that we led as children. Part of the abuse we endured was being pinned against each other. My siblings, when they came home from the hospital, they had similar monitors on their hearts and on their lungs to monitor their heartbeat and their respiration, just like I had. When I was 3, my middle sister was born. After spending her time in the hospital, she then came home. When I was 5, 2 days into me starting kindergarten, my youngest sister was born. Both my sisters wore the monitors for a very long time. And I do have fragmented memories of this, like flashes. They wore these monitors for so long that my middle sister learned that she could yank at the wires. She learned that she could make the machine's alarms go off. And that meant people would run into her room. And she'd kind of giggle. It's a very powerful thing for a very young human being to be able to do. So my siblings had these monitors on around the year mark, even a little longer. Especially when they were newborns to 6 months old, those monitors would go off multiple times a week, sometimes multiple times a night. About half the time, a wire or electrode patch would come loose and the baby was just fine. The other half of the time, sometimes a few times a week, the baby was not fine. The baby's heart or breathing or both stopped. This was very, very hard for me to witness. And this was not any fault of my parents. It was just the way a high-stress situation shook out. If my mom had had more maternal instinct, I believe she wouldn't have had babies this fragile, especially across the house in their own bedroom. And those babies would have been in her room with her. And I can't fault her for that. This is before attachment parenting. This is when the parenting of the day would have touted being more separate from your baby. Now, my mom didn't do anything objectively wrong here, and I can give her credit. She always rushed into the baby's room with speed and vigor, and she did all the things to resuscitate my baby sisters. All 3 of us lived, And that really is a testament to my mother doing the required things to keep us alive. I think she did better with this task because it took no emotional insight. It was a process that she could understand and be alerted to. Heart and lungs need to work. I, as their mother, need to do these things to make their heart and lungs work. In this way, it was tangible. There were boxes that she could be taught to check. And she knew she had to, or the consequence of us not being alive would be very, very high. Thank goodness that technology existed in my lifetime, or I might not be here. Unfortunately, technology doesn't exist that alerts a mom or a caretaker when a child might need a hug or comfort or nurturing, encouragement, listening. I could go on and on. There's so much emotionally and in terms of attending to a young child, a small being, that's not as clear as checking a box. That you're also not impacted in terms of you die in the next second if you don't get the thing. It was never going to hit a level of danger if I didn't get a hug in a moment, the way it could make sense to someone with low empathy, even low maturity, to realize, oh, if they don't get breath or their heart doesn't beat, they could be dead in the next moment. My mom checked boxes and did the physical things to keep us alive. That doesn't mean that she knew how to love or feel bonded or connected to her children, at least in my perspective. Now, my bedroom was directly across from my sister's and then next to my youngest sister's room. My siblings' rooms, the children's rooms basically, and my parents' bedroom were completely separate. My parents' bedroom was on the other side of the house, and this meant that no matter how on the ball my mom was, running into the room to save my sister, hearing the alarm over the baby monitor, it meant that I was up, I was out of bed, and I was often first in that room. I sometimes had my own little hands on my sister's before my mom made it, even if it was mere seconds. I'd get out of the way as fast as I could, and I'd watch. And I don't fault my mom for this because she was consumed. As even the best of parents can become understandably consumed when one child is having serious health concerns. The concerns for the healthier child, it just doesn't make it to the priority list in that moment. And of course it doesn't. It wouldn't have been right to prioritize the breathing, heart-beating child over the non-breathing, no heartbeat child. But what that meant for me is that I would then stand back and I'd watch like I was watching TV in a dissociated, half present, half gone kind of state. And I'd watch my mother try to stimulate the breastbone, rubbing her knuckles over the baby's breastbone, and it looked like it hurt. I understood it had to be done. I understood why. It also frightened me that the babies looked like they were getting hurt while they were being revived. And I'd watch my mom plead, come on, breathe, take a breath, plead with my sisters. And my sisters were so tiny from being preemies. Watching her firmly pound the back, flipping the baby over, and then flipping the baby over again, assessing if it was time to do CPR or call 911 or rush the baby to the hospital. I saw this scene play out dozens and dozens and dozens of times for both of my siblings. For me, that meant this was happening when I was between 3 and 4, little reprieve in there, and then it all happening again when I was 5 to 6. Think about what this functionally means on a developing being. That during this stage of brain and body development, I was awakened frequently, my sleep interrupted. Not just interrupted and waking, but interrupted with the threat of a life ending. A life I had been told in love and good intention that I, as a big sister, was responsible for. That I was to be their protector as their big sister. And I took that role so heartbreakingly seriously. And I was so powerless to do anything for those babies I loved so much. What did that fear-based sleep disruption do to me? On a psychological level? On a biological level? On how the structures of my brain and body developed? What did this teach me, my entire system, about being on guard? About being ready for something to go wrong at any peaceful moment? What did this do to me negatively? Did it do anything positively? Is this part of why I've developed a certain amount of stoicism? Is this part of why I've always been willing to just sort of deal with death? To look at it, its possibility, in the face and not shy away from it? Did this teach me that I could handle what is hard and scary? Is this some of what I've used in my career to help people as I sit with them through their processing and releasing of their own trauma? When I was 6 years old, when the baby monitoring stopped, when my young sisters were old enough and breathing and their hearts wouldn't stop anymore and we could confidently take them off of those monitors, it's also almost to the moment when I began having night terrors. Now, night terrors are like bad dreams on steroids. Typically, you wake up from a bad dream, you realize in a second or two or three that you've been sleeping, you're woken up. You don't come out of a night terror as easily. I have some fragments of memories coming out of night terrors too. As much as I've talked about my mom being sociopathic, not really being bonded to me, there were definitely things my mother tried as a parent and tried to the best of her ability. My mom really didn't know how to soothe me. And the same intensity with which I communicate love and care and passion for basically giving ourselves permission to get ourselves right in this one precious life, no matter what we've been through. I have these memories of coming out of these night terrors and her fear and my intensity, her own reactivity. Even as she tried to soothe me, it came across as she was angry at me. I can look back and see that she wasn't, and my adult self can understand that, but I didn't understand that as a child. Night terrors are terrifying, not just for the person experiencing them, but for whoever is around to try to wake that person up, to try to get that person back into this life where this terror isn't happening. I would wake up screaming and just flailing my arms and legs like I was fighting for my life, like I couldn't even see that she was there, that I had a mother there. Like whatever monster my little psyche was conjuring, even once I woke up, it's like that monster still lingered and stayed with me and I was still fighting it. At the moment these night terrors began, my parents' separation coincided with this. A lot lined up with these night terrors starting. But the timing of the monitors no longer being put on my siblings, I don't believe that that was part of any therapeutic process that I had as a kid. I was seeing therapists at the time. I think my night terrors frightened my mom and any other adult who happened to witness that so much that there was a lot of encouragement for me seeing a therapist. Now, I have limited understanding due to my age about what professionals actually considered But it seems to me, in looking back, that the bulk of it was blamed on my parents' separation and domestic violence. And that was blamed for my night terrors. I don't think the history with the monitors was factored in at all. Considering this puzzle piece in my life has helped me understand myself so much more clearly. And it's from understanding that we're brought to compassion. When we understand what trauma, what atrocity created a serial killer, we still want them held accountable, but we can find compassion. When we understand why somebody is angry and rageful, we come to compassion. It's quite important to come to compassion for yourself. And that comes from understanding. Adolescent me, young woman me, was so hard on herself. I judged myself. I shoulded. Yes, that should with an ED. I shoulded on myself so hard back then. I would say things to myself like, I should know how to be calmer. What's wrong with me?
5 minutes to your appointment.
Okay. Why am I always about to have a panic attack? I must be some kind of asshole. I can't be a good person because a good person is just not this irritable. What is wrong with me? Why am I always so raw and reactive? Why do I always feel so desperate? Looking at this history from my early childhood experience, giving myself a chance to deeply understand the fear, the intensity, the possibility of a dead baby so constantly in my little kid consciousness, I softened for myself. And I could not have had the healing I have cultivated for myself in my 40-something years without this softening born of more understanding from looking back at my early childhood. I am sure my night terrors occurred at this time in part because of my parents' volatile relationship and separation. Not or, but and. I am sure that night terrors were my little mind and body playing out the patterns. We are so much, as people, we are so creatures of pattern, of habituation, that I very much believe my little body, my little mind were playing out the patterns that she learned, that had been instilled in me at night, to wake up in terror, to wake up with someone's life hanging in the balance. I don't think any adult around me at the time, aunts and uncles, grandparents, my mom's few friends that were involved in my life and I loved and trusted, I don't even think mental health professionals in the 1980s considered how the fear of both of my siblings potentially dying on a regular basis would and could have impacted me. It's so obvious to me today, like a flashing neon sign going off over my head, that these things had to have been deeply impactful for my body, my mind, my emotional development, my nervous system, my sleep patterns, my brain, my outlook. It could even be argued that the health issues of my mother's babies were a larger player in everything that unfolded in our lives. I think in some ways the argument could be made even above and beyond her personality and temperament for just not being able to connect in any real way to any of her children. It can be true that we as human beings are made for hard things. We can endure beyond what we can imagine. We are also creatures that learn, and we learn how to carry stress. We learn how to carry fear. We are not unaffected by what we experience, particularly in our early life. It's a great paradox in the human condition, the interplay of how strong and rugged our humanity is, and also how tender and delicate and affected by what we experience our humanity is collectively and individually. I want to add a little nugget to this episode because I don't know where else to put it. But there's some working theories with the team that I work with to manage my ongoing chronic health issues like muscle spasming and pain and some hormonal issues as I get older. And the working theories are now that I might be being impacted today by the poor nutrition my mother had while I was in utero, growing inside of her. So I have a hunch she was maybe using some drugs. I think maybe marijuana and possibly cocaine, though she would balk at that. Why wouldn't the nutrition of the mother, the energy that the mother is in, why wouldn't that greatly impact the whole development and life of the person, not just till birth, but beyond? So these are really nuanced things that I don't think we can get any solid proof on, but they're definitely considerations. And they might guide where we go on our path. I put a lot of energy and effort and resources into my nutrition. Knowing this just gives me a little extra goose of, atta girl, take care of your nutrition. You're going in the right direction. So what do you think when it comes to evaluating our early childhood experiences? How impactful do you think your early childhood experiences, the energy, the maturity of your parents, the emotional availability of your parents, the stress levels of your parents, what were you maybe experiencing in utero while you were cooking in there? How are you impacted as a child? How are you impacted in terms of who you are today, physically, emotionally, even spiritually? Can we also consider what we didn't experience in early childhood too as being impactful? What happens if we miss out on a soft place to fall? I missed having a safe father. I had a safe grandfather. He also died before I hit adulthood. What if we don't have enough touch? I already mentioned not having enough or the right nutrition. What if we don't have enough rest? What if we don't have enough peace, enough laughter, enough joy, enough fun? No wonder the little girl that I was grew up to do this work, to create this podcast. No wonder the little girl that I was grew up and created a course to teach people peace. My God, did I need to learn how to allow my mind and body to be in the experience of peace, of how to live and be in this very present moment without waiting for the other shoe to drop, without being on guard in mind and body, consciously and subconsciously, as if a life constantly depended on me flying into action. So maybe emotional strength training 30 days to peace, maybe it's for you right now because the last few years have fried your nervous system, or maybe you're having a hard time finding peace when you look out into the world and see the scary goings on that have maybe frazzled and frightened you about the future. Or maybe you're drawn to my work, to this podcast, to the peace course, maybe because you were little, like me, and for so many reasons, peace was just not available for you to feel or see or practice and grow into. If life has forced you into practicing fear, stress, over-arousal, hypervigilance, irritation, adjusting yourself to someone else's narcissistic tendencies, if you have grown up learning to be a codependent caretaker of others without really knowing how to be a true caretaker of you, your mind, your body, your heart, your kindness, your generosity, even your hope. And consider signing up for my course. The next group starts on the 1st of the month. That's just a day or two after the release of this episode. Something else that's very, very important to me is another aspect of the Peace Course and everything that I try to put out. The Peace Course is fun, y'all, because fun is an essential nutrient and it can go so unnoticed and seem unneeded, especially when we've had too much survival. Who has room for fun when you're surviving? I know I didn't. There were times where I could be a lot of fun for other people and with other people, but I really didn't know how to enjoy me, how to allow fun and lightness and ease inside of myself in little simple moments of my life. Use the code BADASS if you're interested in signing up for Emotional Strength Training 30 Days to Peace. If you're a Patreon supporter of the show, Patreon has been so integral to us continuing the show this year. We have only recently attained some sponsorships. It's been a hard year in podcasting. We appreciate our Patreon producers of the show so much. Remember, Patreon people, you'll always get our biggest discount that we put out there to anything and everything that we do. If you join the Patreon, you also get commercial-free episodes. You get an exclusive monthly episode and every other exclusive episode archived. You can listen to it right away. We will be announcing a masterclass that happens in September. Finally, I've been trying to pull this off for a very long time. And we are doing it in September, so look for that. If you're not already, make sure you're on my mailing list by signing up on the website. July's live stream Q&A at patreon.com/emotionalbadass is spiritual growth and development. You can come participate. You can ask me a question and interact with me live at the $10 level. Throw a question into the ring. Maybe you come and you ask, hey, do you need spiritual development to heal? How do I lean into spirituality after witnessing so much religious hypocrisy? Should I lean in or lean out? How could spirituality possibly help me heal after narcissistic abuse? How could spirituality bring me to more peace in my life? How do you give yourself permission to explore spirituality if you didn't grow up with any religion or any connection in your family, any spiritual guidance ever? Y'all, you can come and ask me anything, and I mean anything. I made the decision before I ever launched Emotional Badass that I would be an open book. As listeners and participants, y'all are really letting me live out my purpose. Y'all have been my marketing team. Y'all have pushed this show out all over the world in over 100 countries. I honor that spreading, that effort, that vulnerability. And I am an open book to any and all questions and will answer anything if I think it will help someone grow, develop, or find peace and purpose in this lifetime. Come discuss this episode. Come share maybe some of your early life experiences that maybe you're rethinking after hearing this episode. Come join the Patreon, y'all. There's even a free trial. So nothing to lose. Come sample it and enjoy commercial-free episodes while you're there. Light and love. I am an emotional badass. You are an emotional badass. And together, we are where Moxie meets mindful. I'll be right here with a brand new episode for you next week. Till then, take care. Light and love. Bye-bye.